I plan to teach self-defense again this year, and hopefully for the rest of my life. Now, some people have DM'd me and commented workshop, which I appreciate, but I also got a comment that said, before I trust you, I want to see some techniques. And you know what? That's fair. So for the people who feel that way, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is techniques are coming. The bad news is not yet. Not because I don't want to show them, but because I don't want to go out of order. You see, in my system, the system I call R.E.S.C.U.E, we don't rush past the part that actually keeps you alive. Now, we've talked about the R, the recognizing the attack. We talked about awareness and evaluating your options. That's the E, evaluate your options. But before punches and kicks and takedowns, before combinations, and before there's any cool stuff, there's a moment that decides whether anything you've trained is even gonna show up in the fight. And that moment is the S in my system, and that S stands for stopping the ambush. Now, stopping the ambush is what gets you home safely. Everything else just comes after that. And I use that word ambush very intentionally because of Tony Blauer. If you don't know who Tony Blauer is, I encourage you to Google his name and look up his work. I'm a big fan of his work. I purchased and studied some of his materials, and I plan to become certified in his SPEAR system this freaking April. But what spoke to me about Tony Blauer wasn't the techniques, it was the why behind the techniques. You see, I used to think that techniques were the foundation, but my experience taught me that the techniques are the second step and not the first. Because the cool things I learned in Taekwondo and boxing almost never show up in actual street fights or real world street violence. Friends of mine, bouncers, trained fighters, when things went sideways, they didn't get into some cool stance, they didn't do any fancy techniques, not because they didn't know them, but because what shows up first in that kind of conflict isn't skill, it's physiology, it's science. And if you skip this moment, you won't rise to the level of your awesome training, but you'll fall to the level of your actual physical instincts. That's why you might freeze, you might hesitate, or you might get overwhelmed. And this clip I'm about to show you shows why most self-defense fails before it ever even starts. So watch this and you'll understand why the techniques are going to come in just a little bit later.
Good news is the flinch is faster than a speeding bullet. And the only thing that's faster than his complex motor skill is a primal response, and that is the flinch. How do we know this? Forensics. When somebody gets slashed in a frontal attack in a knife fight, where do you see trauma? Always on the hands and the arms. Let's take it out of the fighting realm. Car accident, someone goes through a windshield. No seatbelt. Where's their trauma? Hands again. So what we looked at from this event in 1988 was this concept that this flinch mechanism was way faster than anything. Conscious neuromuscular communication is slower than unconscious neuromuscular communication. And the most dangerous fight is what? The ambush. And the ambush will trigger what in you? A flinch. That unites every single person in this room and everybody in this hotel and everybody in the world. Physiology unites us all.